Here, have another taco. Joseph here. I have fairly recently come from the ice building and here in rainy Portland, Oregon. I am sitting on a wet bench. My butt is going to be soaked when I get up. You know how it goes. Welcome to winter in the Pacific Northwest. See, if I actually edited my videos, I could make myself not look like an idiot here. And that might be a good idea because this might be my most important video. I had a commenter who asked me, well, what he said was, I don't think words are going to win this. Maybe I'm wrong. I think he is, and I want to take a moment to try and convince him, and maybe try and convince you too. Trump says that he's fighting a war, and he's trying to bring maximum brutality, maximum testosterone, poison, dickless, whatever. He's really trying to make it seem like half of the country is an enemy to be removed. Now, he's been very careful not to say arrested, imprisoned, or shot, but when you look at what he has said, it certainly is implied. How do we beat that with words? Well, the fact is, I keep harping on this, and it's important why. I keep saying, you need two things to pull off a coup. You need to consolidate power, and you need to convince the people to let you keep it. And that's about as concise as I can get. And you may say, well, the first one's already done. No, it's not. It's not. I am in a blue state, one of almost half of them, over half of them, something like that. Certainly more than half the population. Of course, people on the right keep trying to convince us that land votes, not people. And I was a Republican, so I did share that opinion for a long time, and I hope you don't think I'm an idiot. The Republicans think I'm an idiot, but takes one to know one, I guess. Anyway, Trump does not have power over those states. He wants you to think he's got power over the states, but the states have the right to say no. Which is why he is looking for any pretext to invoke the Insurrection Act. Ideally, before the election, because then he can insist that the election is delayed, canceled, takes place in person only, on election day, no exceptions, no mail-in ballots, even in states where the only ballots are mail-in, and in front of a masked guy with a carbine who is making very careful note of who you are, where you live, and how you voted. Can he do that? I sort of think he thinks he can do that. I don't know where or if the courts, including the traitors in black robes in the Supreme Court, will say, no, actually, you can't. But I kind of think, based on some of the whisperings I've heard, there's at least a reasonable possibility that there are people who will say, no, you can't. And I think Trump might have had his Secretary of Stupidity and Alcoholism convene a meeting of 800 of them from around the world who sat there stone-faced while he and Trump delivered ridiculous speeches that were entirely political, because the military brass know you don't take a side. Anyway, what I can say is that there is such a thing as tactical frivolity. If you don't know what that is, I suggest looking it up. There's an article on Wikipedia about it. I haven't actually read it yet, but I get the concept. That's what's happening 5 blocks that way down at the building. I mean, I'd say that the Portland Music Festival is getting better and better every single day. You can't really... Let me put it another way. Trump got up there and he's given speech after speech about how half the country are terrorists, how anyone who opposes him must be arrested, must be imprisoned, must be full force if necessary, right? Whatever that means. Ha ha ha. How many people do you think saw that? How many people do you think saw the ice goons pepper spraying a guy who was a minute earlier wiggling his fingers at them? Just standing there wiggling his fingers, shaking his hips, doing full-on sports mascot stuff. And then a minute later, they're trying to cut off his air supply and replace it with poison. How many people do you think saw that video? How many people do you think saw the video of Mr. Frog dancing? And the other, the unicorn and the axolotl and the dinosaur, and I guarantee you, more people saw that video than saw any of these stupid "I am a warlord" speeches, because, man, the dude is nuts. He is losing what is left of his goddamn mind. And he is definitely a fascist. Full-on authoritarian fascist. People know what they're seeing there. At least the ones who are watching. Elections matter in this country. And the largest group of people who you have to convince to win an election have no freaking idea what is going on. Did he just say freaking? Yeah, I'm trying to keep the language good in case somebody wants to, show this one to kids or something. I don't know. I will return to my usual explicit self in my next video. But this one, I'm going to keep the language clean. At least try to. You are not going to convince the 46% of Democrats in this country to vote for anyone that Donald Trump wants them to vote for. They're just not going to do it. And why would they? Man, he is destroying everything they value. Everything they care about. This is a population of people that are not going to vote for him. What about the Republicans? They're only 41%. But Trump didn't win just the Republicans. He won the Republicans and the independents. How do you think the independents feel about him? Well, the truth is, he's only got to convince the independents who voted for him that, things would be worse off without him, or that he's doing an okay enough job, or that there really is some kind of dangerous threat in this country and he's taking care of it, that there really are riots and he's taking care of it. And now you see the thing. Trump says we're at war. He's right. We are at war. We are absolutely at war. But it's not a shooting war. It's a propaganda war. Can we win with words? I think that's the only way we win. Honestly, the only way we win is with words. And with dancing pandas and unicorns and dinosaurs and, yes, Portland frog. Because my mom has seen the Portland frog. She doesn't watch the news, but she has seen Portland protest frog waving his fingers at ice, shaking his hips, him and his friends dancing in the streets, not blocking cars, not doing anything else. Maybe she has seen ice attacking protest frog. Words are the only way we win this. And specifically, by delegitimizing this regime and their violent, oppressive, authoritarian actions. In other words, we win by clowning on them. Somebody said in response to the inflatable animals, Portland is Portlanding. Chicago, you need to be Portlanding. Los Angeles, Portland it up. San Francisco, you're close enough already. Seattle, Tacoma, Atlanta, Dallas, wherever you are, clown it up. Don't fight these people with violence. Don't even pretend to fight these people with violence. Because every single person who smashes a window or paints some graffiti, I think the chalk is okay, but like anything with like paint or burns damn near anything is giving Trump what he wants. The Portland frog dancing in the streets with his friends, that is giving America something that it always wants. Something to laugh at. Something to think is hilarious. Something to share with their friends. These are them Portland riots I've heard about. Oh man, these people look like they are rioting something fierce. And just look at the destruction. That's what I've been doing, is just clowning on them. And that's why I think that's how we win. Because I'm sure that stupid gremlin, Stephen Miller, has a plan to turn this authoritarian grab into an authoritarian state by 2028. I don't think he can get away with it by 2026. So all we have to do is make sure that we win the election. And I said before that, it depends on those low-info voters. But I also said that about 41%, the last statistic I saw, were registered Republicans. 41% Republican. But maybe only 20% MAGA hardcore. The MAGA hardcore, if you want to convince them of anything, you've got to deprogram them. We don't have time. That's too big of an ask. That's too hard of a thing to do. There's too much resistance to that. We don't have time. That leaves 21% of Republicans who are like, I don't know. I mean, I like the whole secure the border thing. America, fuck yeah. Well, there goes my keep the language clean. Fine, this one's PG-13, I guess. But for all of that, if they see people getting knocked to the ground, if they see seniors getting beaten, if they see ICE agents shooting priests, shooting wheelchairs, and laughing about it, which is what they've been doing, How do you think that makes the average Republican who thinks they're a good guy and that this is literally, are we the baddies? Yes. Yes, you are. That's why I am not a Republican anymore. Because, yes, the Republicans have become the baddies. Which is why I kind of wish Mr. Frog would shut up with the comrade. That doesn't play very well outside of the state of Oregon. It doesn't play with people who are or were on the right. People 10 years older than me were raised on a steady diet of behind the Iron Curtain, the evil menace awaits, ready to destroy the world in a nuclear hell. Yeah, that was a steady hell. That was a reasonably steady diet when I was a kid. So comrade isn't going to play very well to those people. So I kind of wish he wouldn't do it. I'm not a communist. I think communism is a bad idea. Although I've got to point out that given the hellscape we are seeing of corporatism, I'd kind of think that, well, no, actually I don't. I think communism and corporatism end up going down the same road sooner or later. You end up with a small group who are going to oppress a large group. That's what's happened. I think that's the destiny of that sort of thing. I think the best thing you can do is limit what power people have over other people as best as you can to try and keep it to, something reasonable, whatever that is. And that's a hard balance. And honestly, people ask, why was I ever a Republican in the first place? Given, I have pretty strongly anti-corporate viewpoints. I have pretty strong First Amendment viewpoints, whichever party thinks that's a great idea seems to change every 6 years or so. But I've always had those views. Why would I ever be a Republican? Aren't they all for big business and, trickle-down economics? And it really was keeping government under control. Making sure that there was not one small group of people who have so much power that they can do whatever they want to whomever they want. That was it. And it's the Republicans who have done exactly the opposite of that. That's why I can't be one. And I can't ever vote for any of those politicians who decided to allow this through their actions or through their inactions. They're done as far as I'm concerned. And they need to be. They need to never get another vote. Flush the entire party. I mean, we need to have two parties. One party is always corrupt. That's kind of why communism ends up failing. If you want to tell me that communism with 5 or 6 parties can be effective, okay. It's never worked out that way. But I mean, if you actually seriously want to try that shit, that's how you do it. But one party is always corrupt. And part of what made me a Republican, aside from, the small government thing, is I live in Oregon where there is one party and they ain't exactly been the cleanest. But I also lived in Indiana where there's one party and they ain't exactly been the cleanest. Was in Atlanta for a short time. One party. You get where this is going. So, can we win with words? We can win with words and deeds that delegitimize their deeds and their words. We can tell the truth. We can clown on them in the streets in front of the ICE buildings. We can... There's a thing that people are doing outside of ICE buildings. There are, immigrants who have to go in there for checkups or whatever. There are people who are collecting their info, your number, your name, your address, your lawyer's contact info, what time you're going in. If you're not out in 3 hours, we're calling your lawyer and your family. That's not much, but that's fighting back. We can do that. We can do those things. We can dance in the streets. We can clown on them. We can help our neighbors to make sure that they don't get disappeared, that they don't get tortured off in some gulag somewhere. And we can make sure that if Trump ever really wants to do the authoritarian take it now, if he ever tries to do it, he's going to have to basically just order the military into the streets when it's pretty clear that's not legal and to start shooting at people. Because if he's got to give that order, I'm relatively confident that our armed forces are going to say, no, we won't, collectively. Well, why not now? Because right now, the orders seem a little close enough to maybe legal-ish, possibly, that nobody wants to stick their neck out. But if we make it so the only option for Trump to do what he wants to do, what he desperately wants to do, is to just go full-on Nazi salutes and goose-stepping and papers, please, and shoot the traitors wherever they may be. If he's not going to do that, we have the option to make sure that he can't win any other way. But we got to convince the low-info voters to pay attention. And they're not going to pay attention to the nightly news. They're going to pay attention to the dancing frog. Ideally, we've got to get Republicans that Trump is counting on to say, I didn't sign up for this shit. Even though, Trump didn't actually say he was going to do most of what he's done on the campaign trail. He said enough, but nobody really took it seriously. Nobody thought he meant it. So they had no problem voting for him anyway. Well, now they know that that's what he's doing. They can say, nah, I'm out. And we want them to do that. They're not going to become Democrats. I haven't become a Democrat. I've never thought I would say thank God for Bernie Sanders and thank you AOC. But I have said those things more than once. But I'm not even a Democrat. They're not going to become Democrats. But they might vote against the people in their own party who are deciding to be co-conspirators, collaborators, or, just cooperators. Whatever they are, cowards. Cowards, that's the word I want. Co-conspirators, collaborators, cowards. How can I forget that? That is the one thing that you can guarantee that most of the people in both parties are most of the time cowards. Why haven't you heard more from most Democrats? Because they're cowards too. But you got to work with what you've got. And if enough Republicans realize this is not where I want to go, And not a single person in my party is going to say, stop. Stand up and say, this can't happen. Enough of them will decide to do something different. You know, they will vote differently. They will support somebody who is at least somewhat aligned with them, rather than somebody who has no alignment. And that's all you need. That is all you need to make sure that an election cannot be rigged. Because if the election is close, it's easy to rig. If it's not close, if it's not close at all, it's hard. It's really hard. So make it not close. That's it. You know, I don't really have like the whole YouTuber thing down where I tell people, like, comment, and subscribe. But, you know, if you appreciate what I'm doing, say so. If you have questions, ask. If you want to, like, make threats or stupid posts, well, the threats, I'm just going to ban you. Stupid posts, whatever, you do you, bots and Russians and people who are indistinguishable from them because you're not thinking. Have fun. But, you know, if you actually want me to do more of this stuff, I've been doing this. This isn't easy for me, but I've been doing it because people have asked me to. I don't know why, but if you're one of them, let me know. Thanks. This is Joseph. Here, have another taco. Bye.